order. The Secretary will read the order of the day.
Debate on Freedom Day, consolidation of our freedom through accelerating radical economic transformation.
The Honorable, the Minister of Environmental Affairs.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, honorable members of this August House and our guests. I welcome this opportunity to be one of the participants at this important debate. In a cold winter day, on the 10th of December 1961, the ANC President Inkosi Albert Lithuli stood before an assembled audience at Oslo University. It was dark time. Apartheid was at its zenith. Men, women, and children faced harassment, imprisonment, torture, and even death. The leadership of the liberation movement, if not imprisoned or killed, had been exiled. Even humble Inkosi Lithuli thanked the Nobel Committee for its recognition of what he called his small contribution to the welfare of mankind. He said the following, and I quote, "I accept the award also as an honor, not only to South Africa, but also to the whole of a continent, to its people, whatever their race, color, or creed. It is an honor to the peace-loving people of the entire world and an encouragement to us all to redouble our effort in the struggle for peace and friendship," close quote. As evidence in the words of the late Nkosi Lithuli, the African National Congress has throughout its history been rooted in the spirit of internationalism, an internationalism that has advanced unity for the global South, for political, social, and economic advancement. And so I begin my address with reaffirming the rallying cry of the Freedom Charter, and the clause in particular that says, "There shall be peace and friendship." Honorable Speaker, this debate takes place at the start of Africa Month, when we affirm our commitment to the struggle for a humane, just, equitable, democratic, and free world in pursuit of just a better Africa, but a better world. Not just a better Africa, but a better world as well. Led by the cadreship of public servants who fully grasp their role as agents of change, we have for the past 21 years sought to live the values of the National Democratic Revolution as we strive to create a better life for all. We have not been shy to lead, all the while cognizant of the roles as part of a collective as a nation. And as we talk of our freedom today, we carry all Africa with us. For Africa shares in our victory. We acknowledge the liberation movements on the continent who helped us in the darkest hour. It is a sacrifice we have neither forgotten nor taken in vain. We are proud to say that political and economic ties between African countries are growing from strength to strength. We know that our prosperity and success cannot be divorced from the success and prosperity of the whole of Africa. Our government has and actually continues to work with Africa's political architecture, with the African Union at the helm. We continue to play an instrumental role working with other coordinating formations such as the Presidential Infrastructure Champion, as known as PICI, and the NEPAD, and many other formations, as well as other myriad of ministerial committees in the process of furthering the attainment of socio-economic growth for the continent. We also continue to work to strengthen SADC to enable it to respond to the challenges of poverty, underdevelopment, and conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, and Honorable Speaker, those who have unfortunately found themselves having to migrate in search of a better life because of the conflict, South Africa has been found to be a welcoming place with progressive asylum policies. The Freedom Charter emphasizes that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. Regardless of nationality or status, all who live in South Africa enjoy some freedoms accorded to our own citizens, such as freedom of belief, association, freedom to assemble and trade, and access to the courts. At the same time, we make a continuous call in support of President Jacob Zuma that all foreign nationals should respect and comply with South Africa's laws and regulations. We must strongly reject the claim by those, including many in this assembly, that South Africa is not a safe place for migrants and asylum. It cannot be that following this government's successful containment or isolated acts of violence directed at foreign nationals that some governments continue to issue so-called travel advisories warning people against visiting South Africa, causing damage to our economy. It cannot be, it can never be that we, as an entire nation, are tarred and feathered and described as having a so-called irrational fear and hatred of foreigners. Honorable Speaker, let it be said that violence in any form has no place in the South Africa that we live here today. We sought and actually so hard fought for. Under President Zuma's leadership, all the success resources of the state have been mobilized to contain and deal with these acts. The Interministerial Committee has been holding consultative meetings with communities. This Parliament has actually postponed its whole week sitting to be there amongst the people to deal with these matters. This process would not be conclusive, ladies and gentlemen, if it did not include a frank discussion around immigration to address often legitimate concerns of our communities. Most importantly, we as South Africa will be assisting to strengthen and build institutional integrity in those African countries facing challenges of governance. The end result being that citizens will be able to have tangible, active stake in their own countries, encouraging them to remain there and actually contribute to their economies. Honorable Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we have traveled a long way, and we fully appreciate the enormity of this challenge. Until the 27th of April 1994, South Africa could not speak as one nation. As a minority enjoyed lives and relative privileges, with the majority relegated to the periphery. Under apartheid, white South Africa enjoyed basic municipal services, but blacks were provided substandard and intermittent water and sanitation facilities, refuse collection and electricity, or even none at all. Per capita spending of black education was 1/10 of spending on white education, dooming millions of our people to menial and low-paying work. Blacks had limited, if not access to public health facilities, especially in the rural areas. As a result, life expectancy of white South Africans in 1990 was 69 years for females and 76 years, 69 for males and 76 for females, because of reasons we know. Whereas for blacks, males were 60 and for females were 67. Over the past 21 years, we as government led by the African National Congress have prioritized socio-economic transformation by directing government spending towards helping the most needy. That millions of households now have access to basic services, access to health care and education is a statistics we often take for granted without the benefit of hindsight and history. It is easy for many to forget that before 1994, massive swaths of our population were denied basic rights in a country of their birth. Today, in furtherance of this government's program of radical socio-economic transformation, we have an industry and development with millions of our people able to uplift themselves from poverty as a result of social programs. We sometimes forget this. Anyone from Gauteng will remember that barely 20 years ago, the stretch straddling the highway between the cities of Johannesburg and the capital Pretoria was a dense shrub, big bush. Today, it is one of the fastest growing economic hubs of our country, with industry development, housing, class, transport, and infrastructure networks. Those who travel this road and do not know the area before 1994 will marvel at the spectacular pace of growth. So much that several multinational companies have chosen Midrand as their headquarters. Such a good story has been replicated in many parts of this country, including the rural area, as electrification and access to sanitation catalyzes economic transformation. In 1994, households connected to electricity grid were just 50%, now stands at 86%. 60% of households had access to water, just under that. Now we are at 92.8%. Over 8 million learners are enrolled to low-fee schools, leading to increase in secondary school enrollment from 51% to 80%. Primary school enrollment rates are approximately 98%, with nation school feeding schemes ensuring that learners has to make it through the day no learner makes it through without a meal. Knowing as we do the correlation between hunger and concentration levels, this enables our learners to attain higher grades, matriculate, and go on to enter the productive workforce of South Africa. Honorable Speaker, When we in government speak of social security, we speak of a revolutionary act and its capacity to transform society, communities, and whole country. Our vast social security network has assisted in lifting millions out of poverty. The social welfare strategy and policies guiding this movement, led by the African National Congress, are to address a legacy of deprivation and discrimination in the distribution of social services under apartheid that provided a net to some but deepened poverty amongst the majority who were unable to care for their families. Today, thanks to the vast social network, more than 16 million of people access these grants, as opposed to 2.7 million that happened to be white and colored at the time. Honorable Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, as we mark Freedom Day this past few weeks, and as we debate here today, we do not need to be told twice, South Africa is a better place to live in. But we, as we reflect on how far we have come, we should never lose sight of a legacy inherited by the democratic South Africa, namely a myriad of developmental challenges that were the result of systematic institutionalized discrimination. It was institutionalized, let's face it. What was entrenched over centuries simply cannot be undone over 21 years. In rolling back these effects, we want to remind all South Africans that are part of this government program to create a better life for all, that we have not forgotten them. We will reach them because they are part of the program. It is a promise that we have made that we continue to make, but not in 20 years. We want to remind those who wish to create despondency and anger amongst our people that our people know the ANC has not forgotten them. And we see this in election results. It is for this reason that last year we were once again entrusted with the responsibility of leading this country. There has been an expectation that 21 years of democracy, that our people's lives will have been transformed. We have not said so. We have a program. However, the reality is that even if all the resources of the state have been marshaled to this end, that we would not realistically be able to reach all our people by now, given the magnitude of the problem. And we must face this mess and talk about it all the time. Let's not be led not to believe that there's been mess in the past. We've got to, because we move from a premise. That we have managed to reach this many people is an indication that poor policies of the African National Congress have truly contributed towards vastly improved living standards of our people. Because of these policies, there has been wider income distribution, improved welfare and standards of living, greater utilization of our bulk services of infrastructure that exist. As we enter this new phase of democratic revolution, we will not shy away from tackling these challenges head on. The National Development Plan lays the groundwork for further building a society based on humanity, on prosperity and success for all South Africans. Now, in line with global trends towards sustainable development, this government has prioritized sustainable development which balances economic growth, environmental considerations and prosperity for our people. We'll continue with the task at hand, all the while ensuring that our solid outcome-based monitoring and evaluation system in government are strengthened to hold the government accountable to you, our electorate out there. Honourable Speaker, in moving South Africa forward today, we reaffirm our commitment to patriotism, to development and to internationalism. These are the very foundations upon which our democracy is built. They are in the same foundation.
Your time has expired.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, Deputy President, honorable members, Bagaetsho, Dumelang. Dumelang, 21 years ago, our nation woke up to a day filled with hope and optimism when almost 20 million citizens voted for freedom and a democratic, inclusive South Africa. They voted for the dream of a rainbow nation and a country free from oppression. Democrat South Africans, we can be proud of what we've achieved over the past 21 years. We must indeed celebrate that legalized racism, sexism, and homophobia are things of the past. We're a nation today that any South African can choose who to marry regardless of the color of their skins or their gender. Democrats, in fact, South Africans, honorable members, we still have much time, have much to overcome as a nation with a difficult past, but we indeed have to fight for an inclusive society. We believe in the values contained in our Constitution and the freedoms that it guarantees. In fact, I take great hope from what I see in cities where young people from diverse backgrounds socialize together in a way that their parents could never. Walking in the streets of Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Nelson Mandela Bay shows me that the dream of Nelson Mandela of a rainbow nation is alive and well. But as we take stock of where South Africa finds itself today, we must be honest with ourselves. I'm coming. Our democracy has come of age this year, but we are far from realizing the potential of our freedom. The government has steered away from the constitutional provisions that serve as the bedrock of our democracy. When the president was faced with the possibility of questions he would rather not answer during the State of the Nation address, the executive deployed a signal jamming device to limit the freedom of communications, violating the separation of powers. South Africans, when the opposition voices would not be silenced, the Speaker had the entire caucus removed from this House, allowing the police to come into this chamber, limiting the freedoms of political association and freedom of expression. Honorable members, institutions designed to protect our democracy and the advancement of our freedom, like the Public Protector, the Hawks, and the IEC, are all under threat thanks to this government. Let's not fool ourselves. Corruption is indeed stealing our progress in advancing freedom, and this government has been advancing corruption. So in the face of actions like these, the optimism we felt in the first decade of our democracy has been replaced by a feeling that our country is no longer headed in the right direction. These actions stem from a government that knows that it has failed us and has not delivered on the promise of a free South Africa. As we consider our freedom today, we must ask ourselves what freedoms mean when we continue to suffer from widespread inequality and joblessness. We have to acknowledge that for too many South Africans, freedom means nothing without opportunity. We are South Africans not yet free. We've only achieved the freedom to be free. We have to also acknowledge that economic inequality is still in South Africa a matter of race. So long as the color of our skin continues to determine our potential in the present, we will not be able to enjoy the freedoms contained in our Constitution. The point simply is, our people need freedom they can use. Honorable members, freedom is about more than a constitution based on a universal Bill of Rights. Freedom is when every child growing up in Soweto has the same opportunities and chances of a success as a child growing up in Houghton. Madam Speaker, we have indeed made great strides since the days of apartheid, but I think we can all hold ourselves to standards higher than that. The society we all want to build is far from this. Our economy is growing at just 2%, and at this rate, we can make no meaningful dent in our unemployment figures. Unemployment in South Africa is still at 36.1%. Of those who are unemployed, 66% are young people. The greatest crime the ANC has committed is in fact not in Nkandla. It's the fact that they failed the education of South Africans. Since, in fact, President Zuma came into office, 1.4 million South Africans still cannot find work or have lost their jobs. Freedom means nothing to youth who are without work or a chance for a successful life. We need to tackle this problem by empowering young people with the skills they need to be employed, while also growing the number of job opportunities available to them. Every year, our government focuses on the matric pass rate while ignoring the quality of education that they provide. None of us deny that access has improved, but all of us must accept that the quality of that education has not. Unemployment and an inferior education go hand in hand and must in fact be tackled together. On the most basic level, we need to ramp up investment in well-equipped schools with adequate learning materials, textbooks, and dedicated teachers that can prepare the children for their life after school. No longer can be said of South Africa that a child studying under a mud house or a tree is enjoying the benefits of freedom. In order to become a growing, world-class economy, we need to ensure that we are focused on raising adult literacy and improving the pass rate in critical subjects such as mathematics and science. Teachers must be subjected to competency testing, and learners must write regular literacy tests and numeracy tests. As it stands, our education system is failing our children, with less than 30% of matriculants last year achieving the results necessary to enroll at university. Those who do not manage to gain access to university have to struggle to find funding. That is why the DA would gradually increase the funding of NSFAS to 16 billion rands so that no student who has an ability to learn is prevented from doing so. And we would start with a government internship program that gives young people a chance to get work experience to increase their chances of getting a job. Honorable members, it is the duty of every generation to ensure that its children are better off than they are. Freedom is never completely won, but it must be fought for in each generation. But we must acknowledge here today, Madam Speaker, that this government is failing in its duty. This government is failing to provide solid leadership in the economy. Instead of making it easier and cheaper to start a business, it is strangling entrepreneurs in red tape and government inefficiency. Instead of reforming BEE to make it truly broad-based, it does the opposite, reinforcing that every South African knows about the ANC's BEE, that it creates billionaires who are connected to the ANC, but no jobs and no real empowerment. Instead of investing in infrastructure that our economy needs to grow, it continually underspends in infrastructure budgets. Instead of holding teachers accountable to their performance or even their attendance, this government has allowed education standards to fall to amongst the lowest in the world. And of course, instead of fulfilling its basic mandate of providing electricity for the economy to run, for factories to work, this ANC government has brought this economy to its knees. The time has come to us to realize freedom that everybody in our country can use. And it can only be done through growing an economy that creates jobs. South Africa has in fact the potential to become the leader amongst emerging economies in the world. But to do this, it requires sound policies and focus itself on growth. The DA would like to stimulate the economy by cutting unnecessary red tape and encourage small business growth. We must become a nation of entrepreneurs and who seize opportunities to become sustainable businesses that can create jobs. We can't simply be talking about 5 million jobs. We must rather be talking about 1 million entrepreneurs. Access to capital is one of the biggest hurdles to entrepreneurs, but addressing it has the potential to create hundreds of thousands of jobs. And so we need a national venture capital to provide startup funding for early stage businesses. We have to break down the Berlin Wall that separates those who are included in the economy and those who are not. We must restore investor confidence instead of driving investment away through foreign land ownership regulations and the spite of xenophobic violence that we've seen. We must ensure that the building blocks for economic progress, like a reliable electricity supply and access to broadband internet, and not run into the ground by ineffective state monopolies. The Eskom monopoly has to be broken down as a matter of urgency, and more money invested in renewable energy in partnership with independent power producers. Honorable members, the fall of apartheid saw the beginning of a new era of freedom in South Africa. But we are not yet free, because freedom means nothing without opportunities. If we want our children to share in the fruits of freedom and in our democracy, then we need to fight so that they will have the opportunities to live a life they value. But we can and we will win this fight, one generation at a time, and of that, I'm sure. Our second democratic transition will be a shift of power from one party, this one, to another without violence or intimidation, but through end freedom of a democratic vote. The party will deliver a nation we dreamed of 24 years ago. In building a non-racial society, we shall be stronger than we were before. This party will see South Africa regain its rightful place as a beacon of freedom in this world. South Africans, let freedom reign in this great land. Rea leboga. I thank you very much.
The Honorable Mokause.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, Bagaetsho dumelang. Today we are supposed to celebrate freedom, the political freedom brought by the first inclusive elections. We were all joyous and celebrated when white monopoly rule was ended. We believe that freedom will bring about economic emancipation, but we were wrong. What freedom are we celebrating when 21 years later, 44% of South Africans live in absolute poverty? What freedom are we celebrating when even those with jobs are paid slave wages? What freedom are we celebrating when women continue to be exploited and rural women not allowed to own the land? What freedom are we celebrating when white monopoly capital continue to own and control our economy? Madam Speaker, what freedom are we celebrating when the government of the day massacred and killed workers who demanded a living wage in Marikana? What freedom are we celebrating when in Mototloong citizens are killed for demanding clean water? Is political freedom enough when it does not come with economic freedom and power? We therefore stand here as the government in waiting, the economic freedom fighters, not to celebrate the meaningless freedom. We are here to demand true and complete freedom for our people. True freedom means ownership of the land, ability to produce our own food from our own land. Freedom means control and ownership of our minerals resources with the aim of beneficiating and industrialization. In the Northern Cape, where I come from, freedom is only the big hole and nothing else. True freedom means access to free quality education, houses and sanitation. True freedom means a sensible minimum wage for all workers. True freedom means we should build our own industries and not import all goods and services. Madam Speaker, true freedom means that we should live side by side with our own brothers and sisters from the African continent. Honorable Speaker, unless we have true economic freedom, there is nothing to celebrate, absolutely nothing to celebrate. We, the EFF, when we take over as government, we will bring true and complete freedom to the people of this country and the people of this continent. True freedom is economic freedom, and we will get there. Thank you.
The Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, while we recognize the great strides taken to consolidate our freedom in the past 21 years, and as we unpack the meaning of radical economic transformation, let us heed some of the lessons of the past. There came a time in our liberation struggle when a new crop of activists demanded radical action to accelerate political freedom. They intensified an armed struggle and imported people's war, making our country ungovernable and human life expendable. We in the IFP rejected this strategy. We understood the lesson of Africa, that the way in which a people bring about their liberation determines the way in which people will be governed after liberation. The same applies to the struggle for economic freedom. If we compromise the principles of our Constitution now, tomorrow South Africa will be steeped in corruption, dependency, and crisis. The call for radical action has come because we allowed ourselves to be diverted from the slow, steady path of economic growth early in our democracy. What happened to GIA or ASGISA? What happened to a clear, unambiguous economic policy? Courageous leadership is needed to pull our nation out of poverty. But courage without wisdom is folly. For 40 years, the IFP has been guided by the wisdom of its leader. Long before political freedom, Prince Buthelezi warned of the battle ahead for economic freedom. In 1986, that's almost 30 years ago, and it's recorded, and I quote, "Nowhere in Africa has political victory given rise to utopia overnight." And we see that here as well. Indeed, in a great many places, poverty, destitution, want, and ignorance have been as bad after victory as they were before victory. But it is poverty with hope, because after victory, self-help, hard work, schooling, training, and experience have combined to lift people up. The question that arises, Honorable Speaker, is there now a quick fix that can replace self-help, hard work, schooling, training, and experience? Have we failed to walk this necessary path? We have failed, I believe, to stimulate self-help, preferring to create dependency. We have failed to value hard work, preferring entitlement. We have failed to elevate education and training, preferring to experiment with curriculums and low standards. And yes, we have failed to enable our people to gain experience, for they remain in the shackles of unemployment. The question is, have we arrived? The answer is no towards economic emancipation. Will we arrive? The answer is yes. And we all live in the hope that we will arrive with economic transformation in the future. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, Honorable members in this House, freedom has many facets, the most visible being political, economical, and social. Indeed, we attained political freedom in 1994. Yet today, we cannot, as a nation, enjoy freedom due to the various difficulties that we experience in the country. But, Honorable Speaker, I want us to be mindful of a fact. When one compares what happened 21 years ago to what is happening today, let us not forget that there's been a population explosion. There's been greater demand for electricity, for water, for housing, for social needs. Let us not forget that, and let us be mindful of that. Honorable Speaker, there is no doubt that there is general consensus in this House today that South Africa needs economic transformation. What we do not have is consensus of the nature of such transformation, and more importantly, the pace of such transformation. The NFP knows that the path to economic transformation is complex and full of obstacles. If the process is not managed with the greatest of care, we are at the risk of destroying the economy of the country. This will have the knock-on effect of eroding our social freedom and ultimately our political freedom. Honorable Speaker, let me add, there's been great successes in South Africa. And I mean great successes. Let us not come here, Honorable Speaker, to mislead the public into believing that South Africa is not a better place. Because indeed it is a better place. And yes, there are challenges, there are serious challenges, but let's work together to address those challenges, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, there has been successes in the police department, in the health department, in home affairs, in water and sanitation, in electricity. But let me add one very, very important point, Honourable Speaker. There has been success, and even in the energy department, even though we complain about load shedding. Honourable Speaker, dabbling in grand socio-economic theories will not deliver economic transformation. Nor will popular slogans, nor will divisions, nor would hypocrisy coming and saying, you did not do this, you did not do this, but we don't do this and we don't do this either. Honourable Speaker, let me remind this House that if you talk about the process of the ideal clinics, the Western Cape is one of those provinces that did not buy into that. But did you see the shocking conditions of the clinics in the Western Cape? I have seen them, so I'm well informed. So let us not complain and find faults, but rather find solutions. Let me iterate. Honourable Speaker, the Department of Health, which has now taken into consideration all the health workers in South Africa, who have been temporary workers and have now considering making them into permanent workers, must be commended, because that is what we need to do to create a better life for our people.
Order, Honourable Member. What is the point of order? You can take your seat.
I'd just like to know, why is he speaking on behalf of the ANC? Is the ANC member?
That's not a point of order, Honourable Member. Please wrap up, Honourable.
Thank you.
Sheikh Imam.
Honourable Speaker, in order to create a better environment, the National Freedom Party calls on the Department of Education, together with the Department of Health, together with the Department of Sports and Recreation, to work together to create more sportsmen and sportswomen in South Africa of the highest caliber, to create to close the gap with the skills shortage that we have in this country. Honourable Speaker, the NFP calls on the Department of Basic Education, when providing NSFAS funding and bursaries, to provide it to them based on the skills. I thank you.
The Honourable Mutla Shuping.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Deputy President, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Chief Whip of the National Council of Provinces, Honourable members of this august House, comrades. Comrades, it is important that we should note that freedom of this country was never achieved on a silver spoon. It was a freedom fought by brave men and women. It was never fought by cowards who today enjoy the freedom that was fought by the African National Congress. They are enjoying it today. They are able to ascend this podium and speak like never before. The ANC has fought for this freedom, and we have achieved it and will continue to better the lives of our people. Today, those who spoke and did not want Comrade Nelson Mandela, those who never called for his release, those who never campaigned for his release, are today regarding him as a hero. He's a hero of the African National Congress. Our honorable member of the leader of the opposition comes here and says, Nkandla is no longer a problem. The problem is education. I am not sure if he wants to rewind the wheel and have us having apartheid education. We've got an equal education for all in this country, and it can't be. ascend your podium, Honorable Speaker, to speak with a deeper sense of gratitude and privilege. And also do so very keen awareness of the tremendous burden of responsibility, which often makes my heart heavy. Our topic of debate and discussion today presents an occasion of joyful encouragement. It is so, Honorable Speaker, because South Africans in particular and Africans at large are in full grasp of the extent of the significance and historical implications of recent attacks on African citizens and citizens of other nations that had engulfed our township. The ANC has never called on the attack on foreign nationals and African brothers. Those who continue to speak lies, there has never been a call from the African National Congress to say our African brothers and sisters must be attacked. It was the wisdom and statesmanship showed by our president in steering our boat of destiny and through what appeared like troubled waters ahead of us. No one would dare claim to not have witnessed a profound providence with which our people in this country honestly and courageously kept the streams towards peace and progress. Flowing in the direction of making one of Africa's treasures and South Africa a prosperous and home to all in Africa, I wish to be recorded, Honorable Speaker, that His Excellency, Comrade Jacob Zuma, displayed significant example of statesmanship. Deeply appreciate by taking the lead in condemning and combating attacks on foreign nationals. This was in the spirit of promoting the agenda of building a united, prosperous Africa full of peace and security. Thanks to the mandate of the Freedom Charter and enjoys of all of us to strive for peace and security. Nobody will write me a speaker, I'm a good writer. The Freedom Charter remains South Africa's inspiration in advancing the spirit of a prosperous, non-racial, non-sexist, and peaceful country's international relation. Our international relations, policies, and objectives are therefore directed by the Freedom Charter.
Order, Speaker.
Order.
Therefore,
What's the
Honorable
point of
Speaker.
Order, Honorable Member. Can you just... Yes, Honorable Member.
Is it parliamentary for the member to mislead the House that is writing his own speeches? We all know his speeches has been written by his researchers.
No, Honorable Member, please, man. We shouldn't persist on these points of orders that are really not points of order. Proceed, Honorable Member.
Honorable Speaker, we are beginning the celebration of the African Month, following celebrations by South Africans of their Freedom Day. I have written this speech, and I'm speaking to you. If you can make your research and find out if there is anybody who wrote it. Africans across the continent vowed upon obtaining first independence of the soil of the country of Nkwame Nkrumah that no African country will enjoy her freedom and independence while any of their sister countries remained in the bondage of colonialism. This was done under the banner of the African Union. But okay, go botlhoko thata re utlwa botlhoko re swabisiwa le ke ditshwantsho tseo re sa di rate mme ga go ka mo thateng tsa rona gore re ntshe dilo tsotlhe tsa bokolonial go ngata di-statue ka dihamore le go di tshela ka pen. Jaanong ke batla go bontsha seila kgaka senwamoro ba tsa hamor ya bokoloniala ba dirisa yone go ngata statue sa bakoloniala ba tsa pen ba penta ka yone ya makoloniala ha ba budiwa gore he lu dirang ba choma ba bua English yaanong ha ba bua sekgwa se ba se thwathwantse ke sekgwa sa ga Cecil John Rhodes sa tlileng ka sona sila khaka senwamoro esifra go a felela foo abatsa go thwathwantsa sekgwa ba go ya ba dirisa dithipa le divorotlo tsa bakoloniale ha ba tswa foo ba tsamaya ba go di-townshiping, which is an apartheid creation, a township that were created by our oppressors. Dinwa khaka, dirila khaka, dinwa moro. Ha o ila khaka ga o ne moro wa teng. Africans across the continent vowed upon obtaining first independence on the African soil. Africa is today at work. Here Gambia, Congo, Nigeria, Tanzania, Namibia, Angola, and Mozambique are a subject of continuous renewable political mandate by citizens executing their freedom to vote for who they may deem a capable leader to take them towards the attainment of that higher and advanced standard of life. Here Sudan, Kenya, Chad, Central Africa are advancing the victories of peace, greater and more abiding than the sports of war. Conflicts, conflict and strives are slowly evaporating, only to be replaced by recognition and embracing of democratic values. The Freedom Charter remains South Africa's inspiration in advancing the vision of a prosperous, non-racial, non-sexist, and peaceful country. The Freedom Charter also constitutes the firm foundation for the conduct of our country's international relations. Our international relations policies and objectives are therefore directed by the Freedom Charters. There shall be peace and friendship, and that the right of all peoples of Africa to independence and self-governance shall be recognized and shall be the basis of close cooperation. We strive for a better Africa in a better world, an Africa that is humane, just, equitable, democratic, and free. The commitment to the promotion of the African agenda, including the Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, and the African peer review mechanisms, derives from this commitment of the Freedom Charter. Must listen so that you learn and start throwing. NEPAD is a continental strategic framework for socio-economic development. It was established in 2002. Its vision is focused on the revival and development of Africa, and inspiration to establish the continent as an active, responsible partner in the emerging world order. The initiative is anchored on the determinations of Africans to extricate themselves on the continent from the malaise of underdevelopment and exclusion in a globalizing world. It is a call for a new relationship based on partnerships domestically, continentally, internationally to address underdevelopment. The partnership is founded on the realization of common interest, obligations, commitment, benefits, and equality. You can never enjoy freedom alone as South Africans when Africa is not free. Because the fundamental question that we must ask ourselves is, why are the people moving from their own countries and come to South Africa? South Africa is stable. South Africa has the correct leadership. South Africa is in good hands. That is why people come to this country. People risk their lives. Others go into boats from African countries. Therefore, you cannot talk about a free Africa in isolation from the African continent. Then you are dreaming. You belong to a continent. Final designs and inception reports on the Serenge Nakonde road projects have been completed to cement our relationship in Africa. There is good progress being made in terms of finalizing the memorandum of agreement, bilateral agreement on the Beit Bridge one-stop border post and on the Beit Bridge master plan. They will never be disappointed. No, they need a response. Honorable Speaker, these heights of the 20th century, I wonder if you can cast your eyes to the graveside of the great Kwame Nkrumah and say, thy political kingdom is sought and won. Respect to that of Amilcar Cabral and say we will continue to want to tell no lies and claim no victories. For we know that our streets, our towns, and our people, through the attainment of the freedom that we have got, we still are faced with certain challenges, and the ANC has a plan to address these challenges. We must say thank you. We must then say thank you. And thank you to Julius Nyerere. You know, it is a pity that some of you has experienced the hardships of living under such leaders. And those who are enjoying the freedom that you suffered for today, they just make noise in this house, disrespectful, because they never knew the hardships of fighting for freedom. We shall say thank you to Patrick Lumumba, Augustine Neto, Samora Machel, Jomo Kenyatta, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Govan Mbeki, Joshua Nkomo, Kenneth Kaunda, for being the apostles of the new order.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member, and your time has expired.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Speaker.
The Honorable Olomisa.
Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Maxim.
I think I must rise on a point of advice to the whippery of the ANC that such people, they don't deserve 15 minutes. They deserve only 4 minutes because this man didn't say anything.
You should put that item of discussion in the Chief Whips Forum and advise the whips of the ANC. Honorable Olomisa.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, and honorable members, the struggle for total freedom is a nation struggle fought from all corners of society. People individually, collectively, and through organized voluntary associations and other organs fought for a free South Africa, either by default or by design. The circumstances under which we celebrate the 21st anniversary of our democracy necessitate that we draw lessons from some of the fundamental ingredients that made the struggle against apartheid successful. The high levels of poverty, unemployment, inequality, and corruption demands that we go back to the collective and inclusive approach
Surely the exclusion of many with requisite skills and knowledge in the name of the so-called deployment policy does not help the nation to successfully confront these challenges. If this exclusionist approach is not attended to, the realization of today's theme is a dream because it will perpetuate the beneficiation of the few among those associated with the ruling elite. Acceleration of radical economic transformation requires, amongst others, very trusted and dedicated leadership, which is not in the deep pockets of the upper class. The key challenge for the realization of this theme is the fact that the ruling alliance is found wanting on the economic policy direction that the country should follow 21 years into democracy. Instead of consolidating, it finds itself in crisis of a major disintegration with absolutely no hope of providing leadership on the very same theme. Clearly, the radical economic transformation agenda cannot be allowed to be a private property of this disintegrated elite. Let the nation unite and march to the powers that be against poverty, unemployment, corruption, and nepotism. Sanjay.
The Honorable Groenewald.
Agbare Speaker, as ons kyk wat die afgelope maand en 'n half in Suid-Afrika gebeur, dan kan ons nie kom en spog en sê Suid-Afrika is vry nie. As daar 'n aanslag is op die erfenis en die standbeelde van die Afrikaner, waar dit beskadig word en verniel word, en as ons gaan kyk wat se wetteloosheid daar in Suid-Afrika plaasvind oor die plundering van winkels, dan sê ek vir u, dit is misdadigheid. Suid-Afrika is nie vry nie. Suid-Afrika het 'n misdadige land geword. Ek wil ook vir u sê, dat as u sê dat u die ekonomie wil vrymaak, then I want to say to you to pay for almost 17 million people some other form of social grant doesn't make them free. It makes them dependent on the government, and it suits the government because they need their votes. That's not freedom. En dan wil ek ook vir u sê, as u in terme van die ekonomie voortgaan met regstellende aksie, as u voortgaan met swart ekonomiese bemagtiging, dan sal u nie 'n ekonomiese groei in Suid-Afrika kry om werk te skep vir die mense van Suid-Afrika nie. Ons kan nie die hele tyd net bak staan in Suid-Afrika nie. Ons moet begin werk. Freedom is not free. You have to work. That is the fact of freedom. En ek wil ook vandag vir u sê, dat as die regering van die dag nie ingryp by die vakbonde en dit as hulle vernoot uitskakel nie, dan sê ek vandag vir u, it's quite clear, your arrogance exceeds your intelligence. Shut up. As dit nie gebeur nie, dan wil ek vandag vir u sê, dan gaan dit die ekonomie van Suid-Afrika vernietig. U sal moet ingryp en u sal moet daadwerklik optree teen u vennote. U kan nie voortgaan om die wit mense in Suid-Afrika en spesifiek ook die Afrikaner die heeltyd wil uitrangeer, maar u wil hulle bydraes hê, u wil hulle belasting hê nie. Ek wil vandag vir u sê, hulle kan nie net die melkkoeie van Suid-Afrika wees nie, u moet hulle erken en u moet ontslaa raak van die kommuniste in u party, want sosialisme is 'n resep vir chaos en wanorde en armoede. Ek dank u.
The Honorable Chetty.
My name is Morgan Chetty. I am an African, and I say no to xenophobia attacks. Greetings and salutations, Madam Speaker, Deputy President, honorable members, guests, and to all of those South Africans who have made sacrifices for us to enjoy the freedom that we share today. The late Tata Madiba said, "For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others." In consolidating our freedom through accelerating economic transformation, we must agree that South Africa today is a better place than it was pre-1994. We have achieved remarkable progress since we became a democracy. But today, Honorable Speaker, we have lost the sense of optimism that our first democratically elected president, Tata Madiba, gave us. There is no doubt that the ANC has changed. President Zuma's ANC has forgotten the hope, the ambitions, the aspirations, and the promises of 1994. Under President Zuma, South Africans are becoming poorer, more of them unemployed, and even more becoming disenfranchised of the promise of liberation. Our people feel powerless to fight corruption in view of the fact that the very leaders that they once trusted to serve them have fallen foul to corruption. President Zuma's ANC is out of touch and indifferent to the daily struggles of the millions of South Africans that are excluded from the economy. The unemployment rate of South Africa today is higher than ever before. The deployment of cadres into high-ranking jobs has proven to be the foundation for the failure in us achieving the economic growth that the country so richly deserves. Public funds that should be prioritized for improved basic service delivery to the poorest of the poor has been wasted on corrupt projects. Projects like the President's private house in Nkandla, together with his fire pool and chicken run. Failing municipalities that cannot provide basic services, yet they award 36 million rand to privately owned football clubs. Administrators appointed to dysfunctional municipalities with questionable credentials earning 200,000 a month. These are to name but a few. This is public funds that should be spent on improving service delivery and maintenance of our collapsing aging infrastructure. President Zuma had promised to create 5 million jobs. Where are the jobs, Mr. President? Let us not be fooled. That is not corruption, that is the major obstacle placed before our people. But it is indeed the substandard education that is failing our youth of today. The food parcels, blankets, EPWP temporary jobs, and SASSA vouchers distributed prior to elections isn't something for government to be proud of. That is not a good story to tell. Our people need permanent and sustainable real jobs. The most recent xenophobia attacks and the manner in which government failed to act both with speed and responsibility epitomizes a government that is not in touch with its people. 21 years into our democracy, have we forgotten that during those dark days of apartheid, it was the very brothers and sisters from our neighboring African countries that kept our freedom fighters safe? Yet now, we have turned our backs against them. We must hang our heads in shame. The Democratic Alliance, as a government in waiting, we will take over the union buildings and we will ensure that we accelerate economic transformation by working better together. We will create more jobs, real jobs, through carefully tested and budgeted policies. We will create 6 million real jobs, and as our economy accelerates, so too will South Africa be a better place for all. This is not a pie-in-the-sky assumption, but was indeed published by the South African Reserve Bank in 2013. Which illustrated that policies like the DA's can increase our economy by 8%. Our fit for purpose and open opportunity will ensure that the most competent person for the job will succeed, and therefore the country as a whole will become successful. The increase in the number of municipalities that have been placed either under administration or dissolved is as a consequence of the incompetent catered deployment of comrades to senior positions. This is the root cause of service delivery failures that has witnessed our people having to take to the streets with service delivery strikes and protests. As political parties, we have a constitutional responsibility to protect the democracy that we all enjoy today. This is a democracy that was fought for on the backs, blood, sweat, and tears of men and women of true character. We must never ever take this for granted. Honorable Speaker, the President's time is running out. If the ANC is serious in wanting to accelerate economic transformation, then Luthuli House must recall those corrupt cadres starting from the top. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister of Justice. Can you continue the debate?
Honorable Chairperson of this joint sitting of Parliament, Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic, Honorable Ministers and Premiers present, fellow members and delegates, the House at large. It is to me an honor and a privilege to participate in this public discourse from this hallowed chamber of our people's distinguished representatives about our freedom as a country and our right to self-determination as a people on the occasion of the 21st anniversary of our Freedom Day. Chairperson, I wish to confess that I'm among those South Africans who each time we rise to sing our national anthem, I do it always with a heavy heart. At times, it is with an embarrassing swell of tears in my eyes from memories of countless faces of South Africans that I came to know who perished prematurely years before we attained the dream we are here celebrating today. Many of them succumbed to the ravages of malaria and meningitis. Some were murdered in the still of the night and their bodies torched with petrol in our neighboring states. Many more were killed on our home soil in skirmishes and roadblocks, and their bodies were mutilated and dismembered by those who were consumed by deep hatred for what they stood for. These courageous patriots, together with the countless militants who disappeared and those who were martyred from the structures of the mass resistance movement of this country, inspired by the leaders who languished in South Africa's jails for life, yearned for social justice and democracy in their land of birth. They harbored a deep desire for a society where democracy is sacrosanct, a life where, right or wrong, the views of the majority is at all material times enjoying abiding respect, as it was in the beginning before the disintegration of African pre-colonial societies. These immense and immeasurable sacrifices and the destruction of human lives underpins the tragedy of our country and congruently underscores the value and content of our freedom and the symbols we have fashioned to epitomize them in our national anthem and the flag included. These sacrifices define our new democracy today in our country, lest we forget. Honorable Chairperson, I want to say it shall always be the case that in debates of this nature, some speeches are better managed by just being ignored. Honorable Speaker, with the limited time at my disposal, allow me to make the following submissions. Firstly, that from the above background I've referred to, it should be difficult as South Africans of different persuasions to strive to make democracy a non-negotiable principle in the running of our public affairs. Furthermore, that when we shall have succeeded, democracy should be intrinsically interwoven broadly into our culture and its subcultures, which we shall swim in comfortably as citizens. This we must do as a commitment by all of us to take our country forward. Honorable members, as we mark the 21st anniversary of our freedom, it behoves us as Parliament to reassure ourselves that our national project of building a united, non-racial, non-sexist, prosperous and democratic South Africa is proceeding well. In the recent period, the African National Congress conducted an extensive assessment of this matter at its 53rd conference in Mangaung and came to the conclusion that the evolving conditions in our environment necessitate that the ruling party must take a conscious effort to ratchet up its programs in order to move transformation of our society to the next phase towards a national, democratic and prosperous country. Naturally, this decision was informed by the progress we have made since 1994 and the new prospects looming on the horizons and challenges which have since emerged lately, on the other hand, that calls for urgent attention. To recap the salient observations of the ANC in this regard, the following advances are underlined which constitute the socio-economic impact of the post-1994 ANC government programs. Without bean counting, Chairperson, let me refer to the programs aimed at meeting basic needs such as housing, roads, access to electricity, sanitation and water. Programs to empower women and to transform gender relations, improving access to healthcare and dealing with the burden of diseases, the introduction of extensive system of social grants, free basic services, and other social policies to eliminate poverty and provide sustainable livelihoods, measures to develop our human resources through education and skills, a program of economic transformation that saw growth and some job creation after decades of stagnation. Honorable Speaker, development is freedom, as the winner of the 1998 Nobel Prize in Economic Science, Amartya Sen, argued. To quote him, development has to be more concerned with enhancing the lives we lead and the freedoms we enjoy, expanding the freedoms that we have reason to value, not only because our lives are richer and more unfettered, but also allows us to be fuller social persons, exercising our own volitions and interacting with and influencing the world in which we live, unquote. Honorable members, allow me to turn to another vital matter which is symbiotically connected to the occasion this debate is addressing. Since the commencement of the business of this fifth parliament of our democratic republic, there have been high-pitched wailing voices warning everybody who cared to listen that the country was sliding into a crisis. Honorable Chair, without trivializing the concerns of the involved parties, and with circumspect interrogation of the characterization of this crisis and what it consists of, one cannot but come to the conclusion that it is a fantastic concoction born out of desperate political opportunism and frustration from the repeated failure to break the back of the ANC electoral support. Chairperson, it is disingenuous to say because the ANC has won elections with a landslide victory for the fifth time since a new democratic constitution was adopted in South Africa, there is therefore a crisis in the country. It is difficult. It is difficult in an observer's mind to decouple the virulent propaganda campaign to implant in the public minds the idea that there is a national crisis from the effectively counter-revolutionary agenda to paralyze the statutory organs of popular power, parliament and provincial legislatures, which white power and privilege in this country has lost control of. By design or default, the patience, there are the impatience with the pace of social change of the ultra-left has coalesced with the right-wing agenda in South Africa's politics and has emboldened the most racist of the right-wingers who were in hibernation in their belief that the delegitimization of the ANC is finally attainable.
Honorable Deputy Minister, may you wrap up?
Left-wing opportunism and petty bourgeois revolutionism, chaired by South Africa's right-wingers everywhere they are found, is sworn to destroying the forces of change. This is what may develop into a crisis of sabotaging and rendering this hard-won freedom unworkable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I call on the Honorable Lekota to continue the debate?
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy President, honorable members of the House, on the dawn of our democracy, President Mandela defined for all of us, or we defined ourselves, our objective, as a two-legged one. Firstly, to look forward away from the alienation of the past to a future of a nation that is reconciled with each other. When he spoke about national reconciliation, where apartheid had alienated the people of South Africa from each other, our objective was to reconcile them and build one united people. And immediately linked to that, he said it was vital to build a better life for all. If we are to understand and define where we are at the present time, we need to judge ourselves against those two objectives, which have never changed and which can never be supplanted by any other. First of all, I think it is correct on the occasion of this National Freedom Day to come to terms with the fact that we have not stuck to the road of national reconciliation. The levels of tensions amongst the various peoples of our country is unfortunately too high, not only among the people of our country. In a number of communities, the levels of tension, the levels of crime tell you just how much South Africans are not happy, are not stable, are not at peace with each other. That requires that we must, as a nation, as a people, irrespective of social standing, irrespective of political affiliation, work very hard to recover the spirit of the day of democratization, of the first Freedom Day, when we said we want a nation that is reconciled. Secondly, and that comes directly to the present, when he said we must build a better life for all, he didn't say we must look back and try and do to each other what had been done before. He meant we have to work together to ensure that everybody without exception, must be given a better life. Their conditions of life must be improved. I think we have forgotten to look into the future, because it's very difficult to look into the future. Because when you look into the future, there is no tarred road.
Honourable Member,
to travel.
Unfortunately your time is
We
up.
have to cut it out. And that is where we are today.
Honourable
Our
Member,
country
your time is up.
must work for the future.
Thank you very much. Honourable Meshwe, may you continue the debate?
Honorable Chairperson, in his book, The Burden of Freedom, the late Dr. Miles Monroe reminds us that the source of freedom is not legislation, but rather knowledge, the discovery of information powerful enough to set you free in your mind. If a man is what he thinks, then a man is not free until he thinks free. The mind is the key to life. King Solomon once said, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." Therefore, he continued, Dr. Miles, you are not free until your mind is set free. Chairperson, the time has come for all South Africans to realize that we are free politically, no matter what our circumstances are. Without this realization, we will continue to act like slaves and prisoners of the past. We must accept the fact that apartheid is over. To continue blaming Verwoerd and apartheid for our failures today is a clear sign that we are not yet free in our minds and that we have not yet accepted responsibility that comes with freedom. During his Freedom Day address in Umtata in 1999, the late President Nelson Mandela said, and I quote, "On April 27, 5 years ago, we knew that nothing could stop the people's declaration that the time had come to govern ourselves," close quotes. Yes, our people have fought for the right to govern themselves. I believe that governing ourselves goes far deeper than the constitutional right to share in a democratic dispensation and its stated freedoms. Self-governance should nurture values such as respect for God, self-respect, respect for our neighbors, respect for life, and respect for property. These are indispensable values that are needed to build a strong, healthy, prosperous, and peace-loving nation. If we are truly free in our minds, then we will accept responsibility for our actions and everything we do in life. We will not look for scapegoats or someone to blame for our failures. We will take responsibility for our anger and bitterness and for polarizing society and instigating hatred and rebellion in our communities with our speeches. We will learn to control our emotions and choose to do right at all times. The Apostle Paul once said, and I quote, "You, my brothers, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the sinful nature, but rather serve one another," close quote. Let us therefore not use our freedom to indulge in lawlessness, selfishness, personal attacks, and insults, but let us serve each other with diligence and work hard to build a prosperous nation that will have enough for everyone. As we exercise our freedom and right to celebrate this freedom, let us not undermine the rights of our neighbor and rob them of their freedom. The ACDB believes South Africans must stand and work together to develop our country into an economic powerhouse that will take Africa out of what appears to be entrenched and endemic poverty. We need to agree on how to achieve our shared goals together while dealing with noticeable cracks in our relationships.
Your time has expired. Honorable Kaula, can you continue with the debate?
Honorable Chairperson, the theme of the debate sounds very tempting, enticing, and promising. However, putting nice words together does not mean that what is said has happened, is happening, or will happen. What is exactly the reality of the situation of these words? Looking back over the past 21 years of our democracy, one acknowledges that the first 10 years of our democracy did introduce intensive economic and social policies to ensure that the transformation of our country is happening economically. These will include policies like affirmative action, BEE, the growth, empowerment, and redistribution, a macroeconomic strategy intended to transform our economy in the late 1990s, and other policies. Coincidentally, these were the first 10 years of a democratic South Africa in which Prince Buthelezi, the president of the IFP, also served in both the Mandela administration and the first 5 years of the Mbeki administration. The GDP rate of South Africa averaged 3.9% from 1993 up to 2014, reaching an all-time high of 7.6% in the fourth quarter of 1994. From 2002 to 2008, South Africa grew at an average of 4.5% every year. This was South Africa's fastest economic expansion period since 1994. What then went wrong? South Africa recorded its all-time low growth rate of negative 6.10% in 2009. The major contributing factor to this disastrous record was the worldwide economic recession in 2008. Since then, South Africa's growth rate has been sluggish and even below Africa's average. However, other countries throughout the world have recovered from this impasse. Why is South Africa still struggling with it? Other primary contributing factors to South Africa's economic downturn in recent years have been that government has failed to address structural problems such as widening gap between the rich and the poor, low-skilled labor force, high unemployment rate, especially among youth. It is estimated that more than 50% of our youth, about 12 million, are unemployed. Deteriorating infrastructure, high corruption levels, alarming crime, and other factors. South Africa is the second largest economy, very rich in mineral resources. But despite this, the country is failing to cater and provide adequately for its citizens, especially in respect of providing jobs. This clearly shows that there can be no radical economic transformation unless the country deals with the internal systems, such as electricity shortages, which is scaring industries and the world, introduce even tighter fiscal controls, sort out the justice and security cluster, show respect for the Chapter 9 institutions, remove infrastructure bottlenecks, especially in the power sector, improve government service delivery, and stabilize education and improve quality tertiary education.
Honourable Member, your time is
thank you,
expired.
Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honourable Mutau, can you continue the debate?
Honourable Chairperson, I'm a proud and patriotic citizen of South Africa. I am committed to ensure that South Africa does become the country of our dreams. Growing up in the dusty streets of several Pretoria townships, among them Lady Selborne and Attridgeville, even in the bleakest moments of our struggle against the apartheid regime, I remained optimistic as I looked forward to the day of our liberation. That day was 27 April 1994, and on that historic day, it was indeed a good day to be a South African. Sadly, as I address you today, I am less optimistic about the future of a new democratic South Africa than I have ever been. The day to mark our democracy's 21st birthday was anything but celebratory. In fact, for many in the country, it was a day of commemoration and mourning. We commiserated with the families of the victims of recent xenophobic attacks that have poured shame and scorn on all South Africans. The picture in the mirror is somber and sobering. South Africa is not yet a free country because we remain trapped in our tragic, violent past. Thus, we are not yet a nation. We have become known as the murder capital of the world. We have become a society that rapes its babies, sisters, mothers, grandmothers, and men. Corruption is destroying our efforts to create a hardworking and prosperous country. Our parliament passes bad laws we know should not pass because of the tyranny of a parliamentary majority. There are more than 8 million unemployed people, most of them young, who live without hope of finding employment or creating employment for themselves, and now we are being warned that they may revolt against democracy. We must heed this warning and get our young people into gainful employment to give them hope. Many of our state-owned enterprises are failing. The quality of our education leaves much to be desired. There appears to be a determined onslaught on our critical democratic institutions like the Office of the Public Protector, the National Prosecuting Authority, the Hawks, the Anti-Corruption Task Team, and the SABC. ESCOM serves us blackouts, and we technically say these are load shedding. We choose to obfuscate rather than to address the real problems on the devastating effects of these blackouts have on our small businesses and the economy at large. These are the very things that need to be stimulated, yet they are suffocated by poor leadership, chronism, and denial. Honorable members, we will not consolidate our freedom unless we confront our demons, shed the debilitating political correctness that blunts any attempt to engage in constructive dialogue, and find real and lasting solutions to the country's problems. While the DA acknowledges the ills of our past and the intrinsically evil functionaries of a deeply racialized society, blaming apartheid for all our failures is an overworked, discredited crutch. None of us can be truly free, while a neighbor in our community or across our borders is not free. None of us can be truly free while we live in fear in our own homes and the streets of our country. None of us can be truly free while millions of South Africans remain jobless. The state police are not free to kill workers striking for better pay and working conditions. Marikana must never ever happen again in this country. We are not free to kill and maim policemen and women while doing their job to protect us and our country. The state is not free to squander more than 200 million rand on the private residence of the President of the nation while millions of South Africans live in shacks, many of these shacks not fit for human habitation. The state is not free to deny the Dalai Lama a visa to visit our country while it rolls out the red carpet for President Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, a failed leader who has single-handedly plunged this country into abject poverty and ruin, thereby turning it into something resembling a failed state. The hundreds of thousands of illegal and legal Zimbabweans in this country are economic and political refugees from Mugabe's tyrannical rule. Today, they live in daily fear of xenophobic terrorism in the streets of our own country. Freedom is indivisible. None of us can be truly free until all South Africans are free from hunger, poverty, joblessness, homelessness, and hopelessness. Freedom Day should be a day of hope and optimism, when we should be united in our diversity, a day on which we should remind ourselves that xenophobia, Afrophobia, homophobia, and racism diminish our own freedoms and humanness. That, honorable members, is how we can truly consolidate freedom through real, meaningful change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable the Minister of Energy.
Honourable Speaker and Chairperson of the NCOP, Deputy Speaker and Deputy Chairperson, Your Excellency, Honourable Deputy President, colleagues, comrades and friends. This historic occasion provides an opportunity to reflect on the successes, opportunities and challenges that we have faced as a nation since 1994. We are prepared to move South Africa forward to a sustainable energy future. In President Zuma's State of the Nation address earlier this year, he reaffirmed the need to address our country's energy challenges in order to create a favorable environment for economic growth and development. The path we need to follow is clear. We must find solutions to our energy constraints in a way that balances our available alternatives. We need to work towards ensuring a sustained and secure supply of energy, especially clean energy. Energy is the means to drive economic transformation. We have to remain adept at addressing domestic challenges, and we must be resolute on delivering upon the goals as espoused in the NDP with a complex global environment. Our plans have been shaped by such issues as energy security, economic growth, environmental sustainability, and energy access for all, within the confines and restrictions of load shedding. Our immediate priority is to ensure that the integrated energy plan is finalized. The liquid fuels master plan will be completed in this financial year and will be incorporated into the integrated energy plan. One of our main objectives is to facilitate liquefied petroleum gas or LPG imports to create a fair, level playing field to unlock supply and to position LPG as a real alternative solution to some electrical usages. We are ensuring that our programs are more responsive to the needs of our people, particularly the empowerment of women, youth, and people with disabilities. To this end, we have revised our solar water heater program to have a distinct focus to include these target groups. Our new implementation model will favor SMMEs in the manufacturing, installation, and maintenance of these units. Special priority will be given to training the unemployed. This will be done in conjunction with the Departments of Labour, Higher Education, and the relevant sectors, as well as small business development. We remain focused on delivering the Eskom Major Build Program, including Medupi, Kusile, Ngula, which will go a long way in addressing our challenges. At the United Nations Conference in 2009 in Copenhagen, President Zuma stated that South Africa would be able to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 34% below business as usual levels by 2020 and by 42% by 2025. The President's clarion call on climate change and energy diversification guides our response to the impact of increased electricity demand. Our key response to this call has been our successful Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers program. The program attracted a range of both domestic and international investors. this program must be broadened. It is hailed globally for being amongst the best, most effective and transparent public procurement initiatives during our 21 years of democracy. We have contracted 5,243 megawatts of clean energy thus far, with 1,797 megawatts already feeding into the grid. Most of these projects are located in the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape and Western Cape due to the abundance of sun and wind as natural resources, but we are committed to improving our footprint of solar and wind in other provinces. Furthermore, we will renew, and we have renewed 800 megawatts of cogeneration. Requests for further proposals to expand our cogeneration projects will be announced soon. Additional 6,300 megawatts has been added for renewable energy. We have altered and strengthened our renewable energy program so that we can create black industrialists and entrepreneurs in our local communities. As part of consolidating our freedom through radical economic transformation, we remain committed to a diversified energy mix. Our energy mix will comprise and continue to comprise of coal and clean energy, hydroelectricity, nuclear and gas. South Africa is the only country in sub-Saharan Africa with existing nuclear power generation capacity. Our country's nuclear new build program presents us with a mega infrastructure project which could be eligible for financing and support from the BRICS New Development Bank. We wish to recognize the sterling leadership of my colleague, Minister Nkwana Mashabane and Nene, in the development of this bank, as well as the regional bank in South Africa. Major offshore gas discoveries in Mozambique, Tanzania, and other sister African countries present South Africa with opportunities to develop our domestic economy. The gas strategy will include the gas utilization master plan as revised and updated to suit our current needs. Currently, its form is a little bit outdated. We will expand our continent's hydropower capacity through the Grand Inga project. This is a mega infrastructure project which will contribute significantly to President Zuma's work on the continent as he leads the Presidential Infrastructure Championing Initiative under the auspices of the African Union. This will boost economic development and opportunity in our region and address some of the regional challenges. We therefore continue to explore the viability of new technologies and new approaches, including the use of fuel cells. The private sector has come on board to assist us with fuel cells. Department of Science and Technology is leading on this, and we must begin to look seriously at mini-grid and off-grid systems of electricity supply. Here, the role of mini hydroelectricity facilities will be amplified. Minister of Water and Sanitation is assisting with small hydro projects to provide off-grid opportunities. We are resolved to work with Minister Brown and other colleagues to address the complexities of load shedding. Allow me, Chairperson, to just deviate from my text. A circus monkey dances around its master, controlled like a puppet on a string. When the monkey is freed or released, the monkey will continue running around its master. This poor monkey simply doesn't understand that it is free. It has its own freedom. This is epitomized by Frantz Fanon when he speaks about black skins, white masks. This is what happened when black people in general and African people in particular are free, but they still try to emulate and imitate everything about their former oppressors. They have to speak like them, they have to think like them, they even have to think that they can lead their oppressors. This is an illusion which was recognized by former member Lindiwe Mazibuko. She ran for a life. She ran for freedom. Mampili ran for a life. She ran for freedom. My very humble opinion to Honorable Member Mayamani, run. Run, Musi, run, Honorable Mayamani, run. Before it is too late. After 21 years, you are free. Run, Honorable Member Mayamani. You have nothing to lose but your chains. 21 years of freedom, please be free.
Point of order. Deputy Chair, I would just like to assure the honourable member there that the Honourable Mayamani is running. He's running for president.
No, that's not a point of order. May I therefore call on Honourable Chafta to continue the debate?
Honourable Chair, as we today debate the Freedom Day, the 27th April 1994, commemorating the first non-racial democratic elections in South Africa, this House must ensure that in future, every citizen of this country will have a reason to celebrate. Honourable Chair, though even a blind man can feel the shift made from apartheid into this democracy after 1994, millions of South Africans still live in poverty, unemployment, in shacks, without clean water and sanitation, and other forms of discrimination. These people have no reasons to celebrate, as they view the freedom as meant for certain groups of people. The recent xenophobic attacks on foreign nationals and violent protests for service delivery, which are now spreading into most parts of the country, serve as an indication to this government that people are not satisfied and that people are dissatisfied and frustrated because their government does not live up to their expectations. As we call upon our fellow South Africans to calm down and accept the foreign nationals as our brothers and sisters and live peacefully with them, this House must also assure the people of this country that South Africa belongs to South Africans and that their interests come first. Yesterday, the 4th of May, the community of Ngau in Matatiel in the Eastern Cape protested for the road, which has been ignored for a long time. Graders will only be visible when elections are to be held for the IEC vehicles to come and collect their votes and go. They then are forgotten. The same day in KZN, the town of Harding came into a standstill for the same purpose, the lack of service delivery. This shows clearly that most people have nothing to celebrate other than voting and be forgotten afterwards. It is now high time that the government listens to the people and deliver as promised before they engage in violence. We must, as Parliament, discourage violence and listen to the people, extend interaction with our communities, and therefore give them reasons to celebrate the Freedom Day. The political freedom should go along with economic freedom. Thanks.
Siyabonga. Honorable Gaila.
Indeed, there are reasons for all South Africans to celebrate the 21st anniversary of our freedom. However, the strategic question is whether the people are indeed at the center stage of celebrating their own freedom. To answer this question, we need to check whether the people are direct participants and determinants of their own development. Consolidation of freedom and acceleration of the radical economic transformation demands that people are at the center of development with resources to be used to meet their own basic needs of justice, sustainability, and inclusiveness. Economic transformation must enable people to elicit and increase the power they have by working as a community. This will ensure people are skilled, their confidence built and develop through cooperation, sharing, and mutually learning. People must be enabled to develop themselves with support of government at all levels and be responsible for all decisions from the word go. This must include assessment, planning, implementation of their plans, and evaluation. The UDM believes participation is an essential part of freedom and development. It develops self-confidence, pride, creativity, responsibility, cooperation, and sharing and working together. Without participation, consultation, freedom, and acceleration of radical economic transformation will be lacking in substance. Total freedom must be for people, by the people, and should result in sustainable socio-economic development. I thank you.
Achtbare Wadi, dus is het tijd, meneer. Ja, dank u.
Deputy Speaker, it is indeed a pleasure to be speaking on behalf of the Gauteng province at the joint sitting of the House. I am doing so after an absence of 4 years, and it is good to be back in the House. I must confess that there were times when I missed Parliament, particularly when you had some difficulties bringing some order in the House, Deputy Speaker. Now, from the contributions that have been made by honourable members thus far, it is quite clear that there can be no political freedom without what some loosely call economic freedom. The issue is not economic freedom or liberalizing the economy. The real issue confronting us is transforming this economy, fostering economic growth and development, creating decent employment for the vast majority of South Africans, reducing the worrisome levels of poverty, and improving the quality of life for our people. That's really the key challenge that is facing us. Now, in this process, we must use the political power that has been vested in our hands to impact on the economy, very much like a blacksmith who hammers an iron rod after it has been heated in fire to create a tool of trade. We have to transform this economy, and whether we call it radical economic transformation or anything else is a moot point. The central point is that currently our economy is underperforming, unemployment remains unacceptably high, and poverty indicators remain a matter of serious concern for all of us. Daily, many of our people feel the pangs of hunger. They can't afford the basic necessities of life. They cannot look into the eyes of their children with love and care because they don't have the material means to provide for their loved ones. And if we as a government, as a nation, as all political parties, do not respond positively and appropriately and swiftly to the plight of our people, they will take matters into their own hands and shape their own destinies, with us or without us. The consequences under such circumstances might not be in the best interest of our country. This is precisely what the recent spate of xenophobic violence in Gauteng and elsewhere has shown. The levels of unemployment and the entrepreneurial success enjoyed by foreign nationals have heightened perceptions of relative deprivation in our communities and served as the principal cause of the violence and the attacks. Unemployment with no prospect of ever getting a job, persistent and pervasive income inequality, the progressive degradation of basic services in some townships and informal settlements, the continuing economic marginalization of black townships, and fierce economic competition from enterprising foreign nationals have created a sense of hopelessness and misery among sections of our people. In an attempt to redress the matters, some of our people have resorted to desperate measures resulting in xenophobic violence, damage to shops and looting, opportunistic acts of criminality, and even murder. Deputy Speaker, the disturbing fact is that a significant number of people attacked since 2008 are actually South Africans, not foreign nationals. Research shows that in the cases where it could be established, 39% of victims were South African citizens, 13% were Somalis, another 13% Mozambicans, 11% Bangladeshis, 7% Zimbabweans, and 5% Pakistanis. More importantly for us, 56% of the perpetrators of the recent attacks were unemployed people. In most instances, youth were at the forefront of the attacks. Almost 25% of perpetrators were aged between 10 and 19 years. It is important to understand this. Between the ages of 10 and 19 years, with a further 55% aged between 20 and 29. So we're sitting with a very serious and a peculiar problem, and that is a real sense of despair and restlessness amongst very young people in our society. This pattern of youth involvement in xenophobic violence is commensurate with increasing youth unemployment levels and their involvement in syndicated crime. These developments have contributed to the emergence of a xenophobic sentiment, a more pervasive sense of xenophobic, sentiment or outlook among sections of our people. Recent research does show that a growing percentage of South Africans feel that government should now restrict migration into the country from troubled African countries. That problems in South Africa are caused by illegal migrants and foreign nationals, and that migrants take jobs and services needed by South Africans, and therefore they should not be allowed into our country. Now, if these attitudes take firm root in the minds of the majority of our people, it will most definitely set back the political gains we have made in our long march to political freedom. How have we responded to the acts of xenophobic violence? In the short term, South Africans of different walks of life came out in large numbers through marches and other acts of solidarity to express their outright disgust and a rejection of xenophobia and the violence and looting associated with it. Only a few days ago in Gauteng, we hosted one of the largest marches led by the provincial government, and which involved almost 100 civil society organizations. In a very long time, this has been one example of a massive united front in the Gauteng province against this issue. Over 30,000 people participated in this march. Our people have spoken loudly to say that the brutality of a tiny minority in our society does not represent the views of the overwhelming majority of South Africans. We must commend all those who joined the campaign against xenophobia and the many volunteers in various communities who work tirelessly to provide and continue to provide assistance to foreign nationals who are displaced. We express our appreciation to the leaders of various organizations in civil society, the religious and business communities, the media, the SABC, the Metropolitan Police, the Army, the intelligence services, and so many others who have worked side by side with government to ensure that the true voice of South Africans is heard and a caring hand is extended to all victims of the senseless violence. However, Deputy Speaker, the fundamental lesson we can learn from the recent spate of xenophobic attacks is that we do need a comprehensive set of interventions and a sustained program to deal with economic deprivation. It's not enough just to bring the violence under control, but I think we need a sustained effort on the part of the government and the business sector to begin to address the real challenges confronting us. We should not rest until we eradicate poverty, unemployment, and inequality through a program of transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization in order to build a society in which all enjoy human dignity and a better life. In this regard, I am pleased to report to the House that the Gauteng provincial government has responded positively and proactively to these challenges. It seeks to create an integrated city region characterized by social cohesion and economic inclusion, and becoming and maintaining its position as the leading economy on the continent, underpinned by sustainable socio-economic development. Our economic strategy is therefore based on the following interrelated pillars: radical economic transformation, modernization of the economy, modernization of public transport infrastructure, reindustrialization, particularly of Ekurhuleni, and taking the lead in Africa's industrial revolution. For us, radical economic transformation is about securing structural changes in the economy in order to achieve sustainable economic growth and to improve the standards of living of the residents of Gauteng. It is not possible to spell out all the details of our economic program, but I will give you a snapshot of what is on the table. Our township economy revitalization program is central to economic transformation. It is to be underpinned by the development of township enterprises, cooperatives, and SMMEs that will produce goods and services that meet the needs of township residents. It's no longer that these township shops or the spaza shops are really conveyor belts for consumer goods that are coming from elsewhere. The township economy needs to be revitalized so that actual production begins to take place in townships, even if it's on the small scale. In the near future, public procurement practices will be leveraged to ensure the success of the township economy. This will be ensured through the registration of township entrepreneurs, SMMEs, and co-ops on the provincial supplier database. It is our hope that by 2019, 30% of all government spend will be dedicated to township-based enterprises. The modernization of the provincial economy is a central tenet of our strategy. The Gauteng government will facilitate an enabling environment for business to develop a new ICT economy, including industries for device manufacturing, maintenance, repairs, creation of new applications, and the provision of ICT services. We aim to improve connectivity of township enterprises, SMMEs, and residents in general. All government buildings, hospitals, schools, clinics, and Tusong centers will have access to high-speed broadband over the next 5 years. The consistent provision of energy has emerged as a key issue for us in Gauteng. In this regard, we seek to increase the generation capacity of coal-fired power stations in Tshwane and Johannesburg, install rooftop solar panels on 76 government buildings, retrofit coal-fired boilers with natural gas, install tri-generation and co-generation plants in hospitals, and manufacture methanol stoves by township enterprises. We are partnering with the University of Johannesburg and the private sector to invest in the creation of solar technologies and solar manufacturing farms. The modernization of public transport infrastructure is to be a key enabler of Gauteng's economic growth and development. The projects on the table include the development of an aerotropolis or an airport city around OR Tambo International, the extension of the Gautrain rapid rail system. So we're talking now of a completely new development around Gautrain. The current system is really a north-south link between Tshwane and Johannesburg and between Sand and the airport. We're now talking of a link between the airport or the eastern side of Gauteng to Lanseria Airport. It is linking with the western side. And the development of the bus rapid transit systems in all 3 metropolitan municipalities. The Aerotropolis project will include 29 industrial initiatives to revitalize manufacturing, aviation, transport and logistics industries linked to the OR Tambo International Airport. In addition, our freight and logistics capacity has been increased through Transnet's upgrading of the City Deep terminal. In addition, planning is an advanced stage for the construction of a new inland port along the N3 near Vosloorus. To ensure ease of doing business in Gauteng, the Gauteng Investment Center has been established and it is currently operational. And next month, the Gauteng government will host an infrastructure investment conference to generate finance capital for some of these major infrastructure projects. Finally, special attention is being given to revitalizing the manufacturing sector, particularly in Ekurhuleni, and giving new impetus to the small but important agricultural sector in our province through the development of agro-processing industries and businesses. Having said that, Deputy Speaker, the Gauteng provincial government will not condone the unlawful attempts by a tiny minority to invade land in the name of economic freedom. Land distribution is an important pillar of all spheres of government, but this must be achieved through an orderly process and within the rule of law. Unruly attempts to grab land will be thwarted swiftly by our government, and we will not hesitate to act decisively against the perpetrators of such unlawful acts. Deputy Speaker, there can be no real freedom for our people, in particular the poor, without their full and productive involvement in a growing, sustainable and transformed economy. This will not happen by chance. It needs to be planned systematically, and government must use its power and leverage its resources to meet the aspirations and hopes of our citizens. It must respond to the cries and pain of its people. Difficult as the task might seem to be, what we can say to this House is that the Gauteng provincial government will respond proactively, firmly, and consistently to tackle the incidents of xenophobic violence and the growing xenophobic sentiment that is sweeping through poor and marginalized communities. More importantly, it is rolling out a clear and a visionary strategy to bring about fundamental changes to our economy and to lay the basis for the qualitative improvement in the lives of our people. We have moved beyond plans. We are at a point of implementation. Thank you very much.
Longwelson, thank you, Leo. Tatumbinda.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Deputy President of the Republic, and honorable members, to us as the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, it is interesting that our state chose freedom over independence to make the transition of 1994. Most nations called similar transitions independence. This might look very innocent to the sleeping minds. Freedom refers to us as PAC to personal rights, whereas independence goes beyond an individual. Independence directly talks to national sovereignty, which has alluded this in the freedom era. The economy remains foreign and it has no indigenous character. Therefore, the talk of consolidating our freedom through accelerating economic transformation is good but highly limited. Personal accumulation of wealth by a few individuals in the African middle class will not translate to national sovereignty and national self-determination. Pursuing the Black Industrialist Program in its current form with the target of 100 beneficiaries out of 40 million Africans will not make a dent to the wide structure of the economy. Unfortunately, Deputy Speaker, we have to take bold steps to eliminate external agents in our domestic economic structure. And then for that, to us, we think it requires immediate removal of North Americans and European consultants and advisors in the development of economic policies and models. Moving away from the IMF and World Bank paradigm on economic, fiscal, and monetary policies. Before consolidation, the nation must change course and set an agenda for full national sovereignty characterized by an indigenous economy. Let me focus on the issues of freedom of our citizens in the absence of the real national sovereignty. So there is no personal safety for our citizens. And in the absence of personal safety, there can be no economic emancipation. Furthermore, the brutal crimes are not declining since the transition from apartheid, but the brutality of the police is on the increase, as evidently depicted by Andres Tatane and the Maracana massacre. Economically, unemployment remains very high at 43% for people of working age, whereas in other countries, a 10% unemployment is regarded as a national crisis.
On that point, Honourable Member, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Keep watching your left. You won't make a mistake. Thank you. Ndademgwe.
Ke a dumedisa modulasetulo, ke dumedisa le ntlo ya hae tlotleileng, and I greet you all in the powerful name of economic freedom in our lifetime. Honorable Speaker, the basic litmus test in whether we have delivered freedom to our people lies in the tangible improvement that we can deliver to their living conditions. Now, those tangibles are that the majority of our people are still living in poverty, many below the breadline, and 1 in 4 go to bed without food at least once a week. It can't be. It can't be when the Department of Trade and Industry has admitted that they are in constant consultation with the likes of Hajun Chen, who says that all developed countries in the world have protected their industries, and this is how they got to where they are today. It can't be when we have understood through consultations with developed countries that protection of our industries is the only way that we can develop the lives of our people. It is a basic principle, and it is a principle that our people understood in 1955 when they proclaimed that the land and the minerals beneath the soil shall be transferred to the ownership of the people. They understood it because it is only when we have control over the means of production that we can truly call ourselves freed from the colonial whims of our masters in the form of the WTO, the IMF, and the World Bank. It is a fact that markets left to themselves have neither the desire nor the capacity to transform our society and develop our economy. We must have political will, political chutzpah, as it's called. The political will to take control of the means of production and the minerals that we own in this country. This is the only way that we can develop our people. The stats are staggering. 25% of our people who are actively looking for jobs cannot find them in this country. This is close to 13 to 14 million people. And when those who have those jobs ask for decent living conditions, the state responds with violence, as we saw in Marikana, in Vicksburg, in Sasolburg, etc., etc. But this is fine. It is not surprising because the very same state responds with violence to its own parliament when there is a voice of dissent from within. It is fine as well because, as Fanon predicted, this kind of behavior can only ferment a revolution from within, and that revolution has arrived. Ladies and gentlemen, the EFF will take power. It is a fact. And when the EFF takes power, we will develop our industries, we will protect our industries, and we will protect our jobs and deliver real freedom to our people. I thank you.
Sitho se hlomphehileng mme Moloi Morupa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. About 42 years ago, confined in Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote a letter to his fellow clergymen and said, I quote, "We know through a painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed." I close quote. As we celebrate and commemorate the attainment of our political freedom 21 years ago, it is indeed a historical and political fact that as South Africans, we triumph. We never were given this freedom voluntarily, or it was never handed over a silver platter. We too know through our painful experiences that we certainly demanded it and the oppressor had no choice but to succumb. Consequently, we collectively vanquished almost about 46 years of apartheid rule and about 342 years of colonialism. It has certainly been a long walk to this freedom, as our icon former President Mandela correctly asserted. Freedom Day celebration always reminds us of a very dear life we lost, a hero of the liberation struggle, a disciplined and a very advanced cadre of our movement, that is Comrade Thembisile Chris Hani. His life was stolen at a time when the apartheid regime was dilly-dallying around settling for a voting date in order for us to put up a democratic state. It was through Chris Hani's blood that we finally stamped a date for voting, which was April 1994, as he died in April 1993. So it did not drop from above. We will all remember how his death shook up the entire country. If we are to measure the discipline of the cadre of our movement, surely Comrade Chris' death was a cruel test that we passed painfully. It was a provocation to the maximum. Unfortunately, despite the political and economic progress we have recorded since 1994, our country still has to contend with the deeply embedded remnants of the structural legacies of the apartheid and colonialism we inherited and its manifestations. It is therefore particularly apt that we coalesce here today in order to tighten the consolidation of freedom through the accelerating radical economic transformation. This is in order to continue taking our country, South Africa, forward. After just 21 years of freedom and democracy, South Africa is still relatively a young democracy. Of course, Deputy Speaker, most people think it's a long time ago, it's only 21 years. However, in the context of the political and democratic transformation of our country, we have witnessed the well-documented tangible progress, which was also punctuated by the new formidable challenges which require our time and attention even today. Clearly, as we seek to move our country and its people forward, we ought to consolidate our freedom and democracy in ways that are fundamentally transformative. It is within this context that the ANC government, in this era of second phase of a transition, has prioritized radical economic transformation to ensure that poverty, unemployment, and inequality do not continue to afflict our people. This plan, Deputy Speaker, it's not by accident, but it's well thought. In order to fully realize the national democratic revolution, amongst other things, democratic consolidation has to go hand in hand with economic transformation. Now, Deputy Speaker, the strategic and political task of accelerating radical economic transformation as we seek to further strengthen our freedom and democracy is a complex undertaking that requires a collective effort of all role players involved. It is for this reason that during the 53rd National Conference, the ANC resolved to lead in mobilizing and uniting all South Africans around common vision, economic transformation that puts South Africans first. The clarion call, therefore, is for all role players to play their part in the radical transformation of the economy. Whether they are political parties, non-governmental organizations, media, they must put their shoulders on the wheel. In the context of that developmental mandate, the state-owned enterprises, I won't mention them all, Speaker, together with FDIs and other public agencies ought to heed the clarion call and contribute in a meaningful way towards radical transformation of the economy. The private sector, as a strategic role player, is also urged to play its part in making radical economic transformation a reality sooner than later. In this regard, President Jacob Zuma, in his State of the Nation address, committed to encouraging private sector investment as part of growing and creating jobs within the context of a radical transformation. Indeed, during this year of the Freedom Charter and Unity in Action to advance economic freedom, our state-owned entities and development financial institutions, the private sector and all other sectors of our economy are urged to coalesce in thought and in action as we collectively move forward to contribute in speeding up the transformation of our economy. Such collective efforts will go a long way in ensuring a freedom in all its manifestation that continues to flourish in our land. This constitutes the kind of South Africa that we want to continue to build and eventually bequeath to the next generation, but not handing an empty shell. We should therefore remain on board and stay to the course with unflinching commitment towards the progressive development path for our nation to benefit. Deputy Speaker, amongst all freedoms that we attain, there is a freedom of expression, which is part of our democracy and its core in the Constitution. It's also enshrined in the Constitution. We come from an era of darkness where there was absolute state control on media, no community media, and broadcasting services, nothing. Complete control on free flow, information, and language representation, reflecting on the diaspora. That's an era we come from, very untidy. Therefore, this freedom of expression will be nurtured and respected at all costs. The media sector is a pivotal part of the vibrant democracy and modern world we live in and has a role to play to encourage the debate on issues of national interest while contributing to the economic growth and shaping social well-being of our citizens. Let us put credit where it is due. The ANC government has, in a very short period, provided guidance and certainty to the communication sector by creating enabling legislations and policies that have allowed the country to be at the forefront and regarded in Africa and the world to have progressive communication policies. The ANC in 1992 opted a media charter.
I'm afraid your time has expired.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much.
Honorable Godi.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, comrades and honorable members. As we celebrate freedom, we remind ourselves of the objectives of the struggle and honor those who served, suffered, and sacrificed for this freedom. We remember those who paid the supreme sacrifice in exile, in detention, in prisons, in combat, etc. The liberation movement inherited in 1994 a country where high unemployment, poverty, and inequality were the lot of the African majority. 21 years later, the African people, and especially its youth, remain at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder. Freedom must have material meaning to the majority of our people. In large measure, we have merely reproduced the socio-economic power relations inherited from settler colonialism. This is because the ownership patterns of the means of production and relations of production have not been fundamentally transformed. The APC has consistently stated that there is need for a fundamental transformation of the economy through socialization and a critical role for the state in the economy. The role of the state cannot merely be that of a regulator. Taking into account the historical context and the scale of our economic challenges, the state cannot be reduced to a manchingelane, guarding over the continued primitive accumulation of the few at the expense of the indigenous majority. The current economic exclusion of the majority is a product of a racial, colonial, and capitalist construct. Solutions to the economic challenges facing the majority cannot be found in an economic system that has produced this problem, that is capitalism. Our economy must be transformed to serve the majority. Only then can freedom of meaning to the majority of our people. We need a society characterized by social solidarity and economic justice. In short, socialism. That's the only way to honor the freedom fighters. That's the only way to guarantee social stability. Remember, if the poor do not eat, the rich will not sleep. Lastly, Deputy Speaker, the APC acknowledges this date as appropriate to debate radical economic transformation. For on this date, the 5th of May, 1818, was born a man who has liberated humanity from the follies of idealism, a man who has bequeathed humanity with tools for scientific social analysis, Karl Marx. I will forever be his loyal disciple. I thank you.
Thank you, honourable member. Councillor G. Kavana.
Honourable Deputy Speaker of the House, Honourable Chairperson, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Honourable Deputy President, Honourable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honourable Members, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. Honourable Deputy Speaker, allow me on behalf of local government, SELGA, to express our sincere appreciation and privilege to reflect on our economic transformation imperatives and how we think we can accelerate and radicalize our transformation agenda, particularly at local level. There's been many capital investment towards economic transformation in the last 20 years. However, the impact has not been meaningful enough to translate into narrowing down the inequality gap. Although data going back as far as 1917 shows that the average real incomes of South Africans have been increasing steadily across the population groups, this income growth has not resulted in a decline in our historically high levels of inequality. Therefore, a need for improved and more radical approaches to economic transformation is imperative if we are to realize our economic objectives and achieve a growth target of 5% by 2019. We believe that one of the ways of enhancing our approach to economic transformation is through minimizing fragmentation in the manner in which development interventions are approached, and particularly in planning and implementation of development interventions. Departmental responses to economic development issues are centered on departmental mandates as opposed to a vision for a locally town or city being supported, and thus we have pockets of projects or interventions that fail to address our poverty and job creation challenges in a sustainable manner. While great effort and noble interventions to contribute to economic growth on all fronts is invested, fragmentation in its inevitable consequences, siloism, duplication, etc., is robbing us of making the desired impact. A classic example is the manner in which the Department of Energy is managing the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program. Independent power producers are required to contribute a percentage of their earnings towards the socio-economic development of the communities where the power production projects are taking place. It is estimated that the funds from all the projects put together amount to about 11 billion rands. However, These power producers are not compelled to engage with municipalities in the projects they identify and or implement. They are only required to demonstrate that they have engaged with communities within 50-kilometer radius to their project. This, of course, results in isolated projects with limited or no impact. And in most cases, projects will entail infrastructure development, but the infrastructure is not necessarily catalytic to economic activity. It is not vision-driven or contributing to a bigger picture, and nor is it provided for in the municipal asset management plan. If this fund was used to support and stimulate untapped markets and local entrepreneurship, we may begin to make a dent in the inequality gap. Public and private sector relationships need to be scaled up to jointly make decisions about the sustainability of our local economies. Economic freedom also requires that we ensure market responsive skills and continuously map them out futuristically, as opposed to existing cases where an FET college in a mining locality is building skills in trades unrelated to local market needs. Our point, Deputy Speaker, is that we are truly to stimulate or indeed accelerate our lagging economic growth. Then we must see 278 local economies as the starting point for leveraging productivity, innovation and job creation. That would indeed be radical. Municipalities are the key implementers of government's program of action. So if we build 278 sustainable local economies and act as one government, then surely our economic growth aspirations will be realized. We therefore call on departments and other key players to rally behind local government to accelerate economic growth in our local spaces. After 20 years of democracy and 15 years of local government, the economic challenges and hardships affecting many of our people demand no less. To this end, we remain committed to working with our partners in government and the private sector to ensure that our economic transformation agenda is implemented through a developmentally orientated local government sphere. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Baker.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, as South Africans, we celebrate Freedom Day, not just to mark our first democratic elections, but also as a commemoration of the liberation of our country and its people from colonialism and apartheid, two evils which had an immense, far-reaching impact on our society. What can be worse than a minority government imposing itself on a majority? Now, freedom should mean the emancipation from poverty, unemployment, racism, and all other forms of discrimination and oppression. But instead, we are faced with growing inequality among South Africans, with political and economical instability, racism, corruption, and nepotism, all a harsh reality of life in South Africa. A culture of cronyism exists, where the best jobs and opportunities are reserved for those who are politically connected, like the cadership of public servants that Minister Molewa referred to. Just forget about meritocracy. And all this while the unemployment rate sits at a staggering 36.1%. President Zuma promised us 5 million jobs. 561,000 of those have materialized, a mere 10%. Where are the jobs, Mr. President? The ANC government targeted a 5% economic growth. We sit with under 2%. Where is the growth, Mr. President? 54% of our nation still lives in poverty. Where is the prosperity, Mr. President? Between 2013 and 2014, 846 children were murdered and 22,781 sexually assaulted. Where is the safety for our children, Mr. President? Honourable Sheikh Imam waxes lyrical about the state of health institution in other provinces. Deputy Speaker, yesterday, the 4th of May 2015 in KZN, my aunt died because of treatment she did not receive. She waited 1 year for a CT scan which detected the cancer, which could have been treated if it had been detected earlier. This because of a hospital equipped with broken machinery in a broken national health system. I ask you, what freedom is this? I ponder the words of Franklin D. Roosevelt, which reads, "True individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. People who are hungry and out of a job are the stuff of which dictatorships are made." 21 years into our democracy, we have to ask ourselves, how free are we today? Do we truly possess freedom we can use, or is ours resembling more and more of a dictatorship? What each of us does possess, however, is a powerful tool, one which can change the lives of all our people for the better, to make our country one which is prosperous, safe and truly free. Just last week, the students of Fort Hare University in the Eastern Cape, an institution of historical significance, used this tool in the most powerful and remarkable way when they made history by voting for a DA-run student council. A watershed moment indeed, and I'm sure one of many more, my friend, to come as we prepare for local governments in 2016. South Africa, the freedom to choose is yours, as well as the responsibility to choose a government which will respect and uphold that freedom. One which can provide our beautiful country and all the beautiful people who live in it with the freedom it can use, a freedom with true value. Deputy Speaker, to every unemployed, hopeful, every taxpayer looking for value for money, I say, there is hope. There is a DA government with a successful track record waiting to share the success with you. To the ANC, I say, Siyeza 2016, Siyeza. To Jumat Peterson, I say, put on your running shoes, my dear. Ons is op pad. We are coming. Siyeza. I thank you.
Honorable the Minister of Mineral Resources.
Deputy Speaker, Excellency Deputy President, colleague ministers and deputy ministers,
Order, honorable members,
leaders of political parties present in Parliament and outside Parliament, honorable members, esteemed observers, compatriots, comrades and friends, ladies and gentlemen. You may have observed that in my protocol salutations, I have acknowledged leaders of political parties currently not represented in the legislature. We are acknowledging them precisely because they represent a South African opinion, a voice that those of us seeking to build a South Africa of the Freedom Charter must take full cognizance of, whether we agree or disagree with them. This flows from the clause of the Freedom Charter which says, the people shall govern. At times, this voice, meek and muffled, or strong and thunderous, may be the one correct lodestar that should influence those entrusted with the role of leadership in a particular historic point. The people shall govern talks to a majority which acknowledges a minority part of itself. For it is this majority and the minority part of itself that constitute a whole people. It also speaks to a minority that acknowledges a majority part of itself. And if I were to be polemical, I would be speaking of a unity and struggle of opposites, which is a summarized version of an entire thesis on social transformation and revolutionary change. Speaking of the majority in this context would mean all of us who are privileged enough to be sitting in these hallowed chambers. We are a majority because each seat in this legislature represents a vote in trust, which must be honored and worshipped as a shrine. Many with good intentions and noble causes to champion, and who would have given life and limb to be here, are not here. The fact that they are not here today does not mean that they will not be here for all times, except those who have paid the supreme sacrifice. Similarly, the fact that we are here today does not necessarily mean that in future we will be here commanding the same numbers. And if anybody wants to ask the questions, just ask Hope what happened. We should therefore understand that we are a diverse majority in the parliamentary and constitutional sense, a point we tend to miss in our daily discourse and interaction with one another. All of us in this House are one single majority of elected representatives. 1994 was about the realization of the dream, the vision, and indeed the declaration and assertion that the people shall govern by our forebearers, who had no doubt that indeed one day and someday the people would govern come hailstorm or sunshine. Parliament, we implore you to wake up to the fact that you are here in the name of and on behalf of those who have elected you. And most importantly, on behalf of those who have paid the supreme sacrifice so that we could be debating as we do today, instead of sweeping matters across frontiers as others are doing elsewhere in the world. Joined together at the hip by a historic juncture in society and in this House means that we are all cast to work together for the greater good, what in political terms is called national interest. Our Constitution talks to this in the most eloquent terms when it asserts that we are united in our diversity. Nations around the world would bury differences and rally around one another when the national interest or survival of the society is at stake, a phenomenon sadly missing in our public discourse this day and age. Elsewhere in the world, when national interest is at stake, even the fourth estate, the media and civil society, run in defense of the country. Here we tend to view such occasions as opportunities to snipe at each other and score cheap political points. But then, it is all in the name of democracy. In other words, the democracy we have won in 1994 is the common womb we share and should therefore collectively protect and defend. This democracy, the essence of which is the transfer of political power from a minority regime to the people as a whole, constitutes a qualitative leap forward in the struggle for liberation and political defeat for apartheid and all that it stood for. In the first post-independent Mangaung conference, the ANC characterized the current phase as a beachhead of the revolution. And if you are emerging from the deep ocean, you would probably understand the beauty and joy of being on dry land, especially after 3 centuries of twilight existence in the shadow of an apparently invisible and mighty wave of white supremacy. Transfer of political power and its capture by Madiba and his generation remains an unassailable and towering monument, firmly entrenched as indelible footprints on the sands of our times and deep into posterity beyond the limit of times. It therefore goes without saying that we must defend our parliament and democratic institutions created under this constitution. Defending our parliament should not mean failure to hold the executive to account, as it is one of the critical and core functions of the legislature, in an order characterized by the separation of powers such as we have in the Republic. However, for the legislature to fulfill its constitutional mandate, it must itself observe its own rules and procedures as the epitome of the Most High symbol, representing the people's will in the country. The way this legislature behaves, speaks, and articulates its diversity should therefore demonstrate the understanding that it respects each vote that constituted. In recent times, however, and unfortunately, this high demand for parliamentary decorum has been most visible by its absence, as it got drowned in procedural fallacies. Fallacies that may appear revolutionary in form, but in fact, in essence, reactionary. For instance, if a member sits down when they are supposed to stand, or stand when they are supposed to sit down, simply because they claim to have been elected, that constitutes the highest disrespect for those votes that have got that member into this legislature. But most damning is the loss of self-respect. When one loses that, the bridge between normality and insanity becomes densely blurred. The task for those still sane is not to join the fray and thus fall into an abyss of history. The ANC refuses to drown our parliament in a sea of dysfunctionality. And if it means that members have to be carried out of this legislature, so it shall be done. We need this parliament to function. We want it as a base that we must use to effect the second.
Order, Deputy
Thank you.
Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
What's your point of order, Honorable Member? Please take your seat, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister, please take your seat.
Deputy Speaker, I rise on Rule 14F. I think the Minister's speech is irrelevant.
You are out of order, Honorable Member. Please proceed, Minister.
We need this parliament as a launching pad for the second phase of the National Democratic Revolution. For the record, even those opposed to the current government, they do need a functional democracy for them to play out their childish dreams. The alternative is too ghastly to contemplate. The alternative to democracy is too ghastly to contemplate. Some of us have been there, and it is not nice, as it might look from a distance of a child gaze romanticizing what it might be like, or from backward lands held prisoner by memories of all power vanquished. I conclude this portion on our unity of interest on this note, the unity of opposites. Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker, I now propose to deal with the second element of this social theory. Could I get some protection, please? From the howling. I now propose to deal with the second element of this social theory, which in fact speaks to the reality of our times, a constant of our lives in a class-divided society, a bitter truth about South Africa of today. This is known and posited as the struggle of opposites. The basis and cause of this struggle in classical terms is the contradiction between social production of wealth and private redistribution of what has been socially and communally produced. For purposes of today's debate, I shall confine myself
to the description of this contradiction as it relates to the disparities between the white owners of the economy and black non-owners who contribute no less to the common economy of the Republic. Let me hasten to add, Deputy Speaker, science concerns itself with evidence-based outcomes. The current South African outcome is the one I've just described. Therefore, the principal and urgent goal of the National Democratic Revolution today is the abolition of racial inequalities by the democratization of the economy. In other words, the white economy must be destroyed and replaced by the economy which is neither white nor black. Guided by the National Development Plan given to us by that visionary leader, Comrade President Jacob Gelitlegiso Zuma.
Honorable Minister, your time has expired, sir.
Has it expired?
Honorable members, let's go out and ensure that this 21st anniversary of freedom is made better for all citizens of our country. I do wish to say to the House that we have a democratic and constitutional responsibility to use and advance the 11 official languages. I think the joint sitting and its constituent part, the NCOP and the National Assembly, can do better in this regard. That concludes the debate and the business of the joint sitting. The joint sitting will rise. Thank you.